We're looking forward to it. And I'm also particularly looking forward to being educated on some of the challenges and situations that we find in this region. So it remains me to say again, the UK will always be a supporter of conservation of great apes and many other wildlife species. We're very pleased to be invited. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I wish you all the best for the rest of the event. Thank you very much.
Merci. Alors, nous avons pris un peu de retard dans le déroulé de notre programme. Nous allons passer la parole à Denise qui est déjà là et qui me confirme que sa présentation est bien calée, même si le tableau est encore tout bleu, l'écran est encore tout bleu. Et nous allons suggérer peut-être voilà, que vous déplaciez pour pouvoir suivre la présentation de Denis. Parfait, elle est là. Il y a un micro baladeur. Oui, il est là.
Good afternoon, everyone. Please, there are empty seats at the front. Unfortunately, the screen is not so big, so if you come forward a bit, you'll be able to see and follow the discussion very easily. Yeah. I just want to say a big thank you to Alliance GSAC for giving me this opportunity to present the state of great apes in the Congo Basin. My name is Ekoge Abwe. I'm a primatologist. I work for the San Diego Zoo Global. And my field work is focused on Ebo Forest in the littoral region and the Mbam and Jerem National Park, which cuts across 3 regions. That's the East, Adamawa, and the Center region. Just as a bit of an outline, I want us to focus a bit on that region we call the Central African region. That's the Congo Basin. What are the great apes that are found in this area and where are they found? What is the conservation status of this? And maybe we'll talk about threats and some conservation action, especially the community, local, grassroots conservation action that we have in the area. And finally, we'll talk a bit about the challenges and perspectives. So this area is what we call the Congo Basin, which is in Central Africa. And just to put it in perspective, this is the second most important rainforest mass in the world, you know, after the Amazon, of course. And it's a great biodiversity hotspot with 2 key biodiversity hotspots. Up here we have what we call the Gulf of Guinea biodiversity hotspot, and further down we have the Congo Basin, which cuts across, you know, several countries, as we know, Cameroon, Congo Republic, Democratic Republic of Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Gabon. You know, all these countries make up what we call the Congo Basin. And this area is so important in terms of biodiversity because of the diversity in habitats we find across this area. And we should know that about 20% of species of plants and animals in the world are found in this area. So it's a very important area globally. And I just want to zoom into what I'll call, you know, the importance of the area in terms of primates. There are many primate species that are found just in this area and nowhere else in the world. So this is like a heat map for primates. So the red colors indicate the most important areas, and the sky blue colors, you know, areas that are not as important in terms of primate endemism. And so in this area, we'll find a whole wide range of species from nocturnal primates to, you know, great apes, which will be the focus of our discussion today. So this area is really, really an area of great biodiversity significance. And I want us to talk a bit more about chimpanzees, gorillas, bonobos, because that is actually the subject of our forum. That's actually where we're trying to, you know, put our efforts together to conserve this. So what is so specific about this group of animals that makes them so important? One of the things is that, all of these great apes you find in this area, gorillas, chimpanzees, bonobos, they have so much in common. We share a lot of genes with them. More than 95% of genes are shared in common between humans and this group of animals. And in addition to that, they have many, many morphological adaptations that are, just like those for humans. For instance, it's only chimpanzees and gorillas that will be able to move their arms around like the way we move them. So, that's a great adaptation. They have forward-facing eyes that can see depth just like we do. They don't have hair, on their faces. They can walk bipedally, just so much of this. And even important is the fact that, they are so social, just like we are social. They show care and love to one another. And another thing is that, like humans, they have, very long interbirth intervals. And they invest so much in bringing up their young. So anything that happens to this group of animals, in terms of like reduction in population, it affects them a lot, for the population to stabilize. And that is why we see that a lot of it is going down. And because of the similarity with humans, many of the diseases that affect humans, will also affect this group of animals. I want us to look now more closely at, the different species of great apes across Africa and how this compares with the Central African region. If you look at the map I've just put on, this is the map of chimpanzee distribution across Africa. And we see that we have one subspecies let me put it this way, two chimpanzee species in Africa. That is the robust chimpanzee that ranges from West Africa all across to East Africa. And then we have the bonobos that are unique to the Democratic Republic of Congo. And in terms of the common chimpanzee, there are 4 subspecies. Of these 4 subspecies, there is one in Western Africa, and the rest of them are found actually in the Congo Basin. So just looking at that picture, we'll see that the Congo Basin is actually the great ape capital of Africa and if not of the world. So we actually have a lot of potential for this. And what is it that makes this area so unique in terms of, great ape diversity? If you look at the arrow here, that arrow is actually at the Sanaga River in Cameroon. And it's that river that separates, this western group of chimpanzees from the eastern group of chimpanzees. So that river is acting as a biogeographical divide, okay? And it's not only the Sanaga River that does that sort of separation. We have the Obangi River here that separates the eastern chimpanzee from the central chimpanzee. And we have, the bonobos here are actually separated from these chimpanzees by the Congo River. So we see that so much is in play, for the diversity of great apes in this region. And the same scenario is for gorillas as well. This is just the map of, part of Central Africa, or what we call the Congo Basin. And you see that the bulk of gorillas are found in this area. There are no gorillas in West Africa. There's a bit of, gorilla population in East Africa. But our gorillas are found mainly in the Congo Basin, Cameroon, Equatorial Guinea, Gabon, Congo. This is where the bulk of gorillas are found. And here at the Cameroon-Nigerian border, we have another gorilla population that we call cross-river gorillas. So, this is the diversity of gorillas in Africa and mainly in the Congo Basin. So there are 2 gorilla species. We have the eastern gorillas, which is made up of the mountain gorillas and the eastern lowland gorillas, as well as the western gorillas, where we have the western lowland gorillas, the main chunk here, and the cross-river gorillas. But interestingly, there could be another population, subspecies of gorillas in Cameroon, the Ebo gorillas. There's actually research going on now to determine, what subspecies this is, whether it's, the cross-river gorilla or western lowland gorilla, or it could be a unique and new subspecies on its own. So that is the situation of gorillas and chimpanzees across this area. And I said again, there's no other area in the world, of great apes concentration in terms of diversity and numbers than this, like this area. And let's look now in terms of numbers, what exactly we find on the ground. We have Nigeria-Cameroon chimpanzees, for example. These chimpanzees are found in 2 countries. Their range is from the north of the Sanaga River in Cameroon and goes into the eastern Nigeria. So these are actually the chimpanzees population that is most threatened. We have just less than 9,000 individuals in the wild, and this makes them really, really vulnerable. And of these, the bulk of them live in Cameroon, and are classified as endangered. So one thing we should note is that their population is actually decreasing. And maybe later in the talk, we'll be talking about why these populations of great apes are decreasing in the area. The second group I just want us to highlight again is central chimpanzees. And central chimpanzees cut across most of the countries in Central Africa. So you find them south of the Senegal River in Cameroon, you find them in Gabon, you find them in Congo, you find them also a bit in the Central African Republic, and also in Cabinda, that's in Angola. So this is actually an important population. And the bulk of these chimpanzees are found in Congo, 40%. We have also in Gabon, which about 33%, and then Cameroon. And again, their numbers are going down, and they are classified as endangered on the IUCN list. And the other thing I want to say is that the countries across this area have wildlife laws that put the classification of the threat level of these animals, to the highest degree of threat, and they are totally protected by the national laws in place, including, what we have here as international, conservation threats and classifications, Eastern chimpanzees, the bulk of these are found in the Democratic Republic of Congo, more than 95%. A bit we have in Uganda and Tanzania. But the Democratic Republic of Congo is, peculiar in many ways, because this is the only area, that we also find the bonobos. And bonobos, we think there are about 20,000 individuals in the wild, but there are so many areas that have not been surveyed yet. And so maybe this will be updated in time. And, this is found only in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and they are also endangered. Let's talk a bit about gorillas. Cross-river gorilla, I said that the border between Cameroon and Nigeria. And, we have a few scattered populations, maybe about 11, groups or so. Not so many individuals, maybe less than 300 individuals, and these are classified as critically endangered, because there's a lot happening in their habitat, from hunting to habitat loss and all of that. It makes this gorilla population really, really endangered. That's why it's classified as critically endangered, and even our laws classify them under category A, which is the most protected. What about western lowland gorillas? They have a broader distribution, just like we found on the map. The bulk of them are found in Congo, Gabon, and then Cameroon. This is where we find these great apes. But despite the seemingly large numbers there, like 300 and something thousand individuals, this is classified as critically endangered because it has actually been witnessing drastic drops in their population over the years. Up to 2013, the population diminished by close to 20%, and then 2018, there was another 14% or so drop. So we think that, this is actually, better if it's classified as critically endangered. So what are the main problems, conservation threats of these species? We all know of the bushmeat trade. Unfortunately, the Congo Basin, with all its diversity, is also the area that is also characterized by the highest rates of hunting, maybe in the world. And so people hunt even great apes to feed on. They also hunt great apes, killing so many adults just to have babies, to have them in the pet trade. So this is one of the main threats that is decimating a lot of populations of great apes in this area. We have habitat loss. I just want us to look at this time series. That is, a forest cover map of the area, Central Africa area, Gulf of Guinea and Congo Basin in 2001. The blue there represents forest, the green represents forest, And if you look at, 2019, you see a lot of red in the area, This is actually forest cover loss. So there's a lot of loss of forest in the area, and forest loss means, habitat loss for chimpanzees and gorillas, which depend on mature forests, primary forests to live on. And so if we are destroying a lot of habitat, we are actually working against this species. And one of the drivers of this is agriculture. Not only like plantation agriculture like this we see, but even, like subsistence agriculture in the whole area. We also have, logging, which, opens up remote parts of the forest, destroys habitat, create opportunities for hunting and all of that. So these are some of the major threats. And I just want to bring up this study that was published in 2018. If you look at this is Central Africa, and these are the main drivers of forest loss in the area. And one of the main drivers, more than 90% of forest loss in the DRC is actually attributed to agriculture. The percentage is also high for Central African Republic, Cameroon. And the other driver, as you can see in purple, is actually forest loss through logging. So these are some of the main threats that, are actually leading to a lot of forest loss. And over a period of 15 years, from 2014 to 15, this group actually measured that about 165,000 kilometers square of forest was lost. This is a huge chunk of forest. And, putting together all these things, we see that, we are losing forest, we are, human activity is losing forest, we're actually losing habitat for the animals, we are increasing, gas emissions into the atmosphere. So a lot of things are happening against us, and it is actually we causing it and being translated to the great apes as well. I just want to end here by talking about, diseases. A few people mentioned earlier how, great apes have actually been open to a lot of, epidemics in the area. We have, for instance, the outbreak of Ebola, which, as I said again before, we share a lot of genes between humans and these great apes, and what affects humans most likely affects great apes as well. So this map is actually showing the incidence of great ape, human Ebola-related, casualties, and, the great apes. So we look at here, for instance, in Gabon and Congo, several populations of great apes were affected by the outbreak of Ebola from the 90s. And this, wiped out, in some cases, up to 90% of populations. And if you lose 90% of a population of either chimpanzees or gorillas, given the fact that they reproduce so slowly, it might take about 130 years for these populations to recover. So, just killing one or two animals, can mean that you are bringing the population to a standstill or to diminish. So these are some of the things that are actually affecting. And we know that today there's this whole incidence of COVID-19, which is like touching the whole world. We don't have any cases yet in great ape populations, but there is that potential that if this, if this finds its way into great ape habitats, it might actually cause catastrophes. So we have to be really, really careful, how we carry out our research and conservation work so that these animals we cherish so much are not really threatened. So those are the problems, What happens in terms now of protection, all these countries in Central Africa, you find, this is just a rough map of protected areas. So there are protected areas across the gorilla and chimpanzee range across this area. And, these are all countries that are signatories to different conventions, for biodiversity conservation, as well as, the conservation of great apes across this area. But one thing we'll find is that not all great ape populations are in protected areas. Maybe the bulk of the populations are outside protected areas, and it gives us, the opportunity as community conservationists, as those who promote biodiversity conservation, to actually work in synergy with the authorities to be able to protect what is even outside the protected areas. And the good thing is that the laws in these different countries, put down are for the conservation both within and outside protected areas. So, for instance, the 1994 Wildlife Law of Cameroon classifies chimpanzees and gorillas as Class A. So no matter where they are found, whether in your backyard, you are not supposed to capture, you are not supposed to harm them. So these laws are actually, so important. And someone talked earlier about Cameroon I know it's the director who talked about, the president ratifying the Paris Gorilla Agreement. This is really important because even our policy at the highest level is supporting the conservation of gorillas and their habitats. And this will go a long way as well to protect chimpanzees because, as I said earlier, these are all sympatric. Okay? And these same laws apply to, other countries. For example, in Congo, they have this classification, just like in Cameroon, their wildlife law, class A, B, and C species. And class A species, just like see here, I'm sorry, this is small, but these are totally protected species, so it includes the gorillas of the area as well as the chimpanzees. In addition to that, there are coordinated efforts at really, like high level that bring together stakeholders from different backgrounds, to put guidelines together to prioritize actions, on conservation. It brings together researchers, conservationists, governments, and comes up with these well-structured IUC and supported guidelines, what we call conservation action plans. And these are for each species in the region, from western lowland gorillas to central chimpanzees, Nigeria, Cameroon chimpanzees, cross-river gorillas to bonobos. And the good thing is that these are always updated so that we have, updated actions based on the realities on the ground. And now, to the core of our work, community or local grassroots implication in the conservation of great apes. I'm really happy that GISAC has put this together, and I see a lot of activity already on the ground from the stands. We've been seeing what groups are doing. For example, the Endangered Species International of Congo, sees the main problem people have that takes them into grade 8 habitat is that of poverty. They want to make money, so how do you do it? Provide alternatives. And one of the alternatives they have here is, the farming of plantains and banana, and they produce these chips, microchips, which are sold, in cities and bringing income to the local population. We have, the same thing, in Mukalaba Dudu National Park, where there's an initiative to habituate gorillas so that they can promote ecotourism. And we all know how gorilla tourism is linked to a lot of revenue for the government and local communities in Rwanda and Uganda. So this is actually something to encourage. And looking at one of the stands, WWF is actually working with 5 groups around the Campo area as well in this domain. So this is something we should encourage. We have this group that works, for the conservation of bonobos in DRC. And their focus, actually, they've realized that the main thing that drives, that threatens bonobos in the area is not hunting, it's more habitat loss. And, to be able to protect the bonobos, they are actually coming together and seeking to have community forestry, community forests. And, these initiatives are now like, we need to protect the forest in order to protect our bonobos. So these are all innovative ideas that are coming from the base, and I think if we work, from the base, going up to like policy level, we'll actually be doing a lot, The same thing is for, ERUDEF, tropical forest and rural development, all of these, work to improve the livelihoods of local communities and reduce dependence on forests. We have the case of Ebo, where they have the Club des Amis des Gorilles. And what do? They participate in monitoring to know where the small gorilla population in Ebo is, to see what is actually driving this and propose alternative livelihood activities and even carry out sensitization on the importance of this small gorilla population. Some of the key challenges to conservation work in the area, of course, we know there's insecurity. For a long time, DRC, Congo has been an area where researchers and conservationists cannot work because of, armed conflicts. Parts of Cameroon now are even inaccessible to conservationists and researchers, and, this puts a lot of great apes, especially cross-river gorillas and Nigeria, Cameroon chimpanzees into danger. We have competing land uses. Many people think it's more profitable to put land in forests, as maybe a forest reserve, or transform it into, a large industrial plantation, rather than, conserving, the great apes and chimpanzees and gorillas that are in this. And this, we actually have to be, looking for ways to make, gorillas and chimpanzees as a land use option a lot more profitable. Yes, we have the problem of law enforcement. Our laws on papers are so good, but their implementation on the ground is lacking because maybe there's lack of personnel. The personnel is not well equipped. The areas are remote where all of these things are taking place. So, we really, really have to, try to see how to, solve some of these problems. And many of the local communities that depend on, these resources, this habitat where the chimpanzees, gorillas are found, they are really remote. They don't have economic opportunities. And I think, this is actually an impediment. And the good thing is that there are so many grassroots organizations that are working with this now to actually have, bring them more into focus. Just for perspective, I think, this is a time where we need to bring together a broad range of stakeholders from these grassroots communities where we are, government, researchers, students, policy makers, donors. Everybody has to come together. It's a concerted effort. We all need to come together to be able to, conserve great apes in the area. Yes, we have to make great ape conservation, a profitable business, which is why I'm really impressed that there are some groups that are thinking of ecotourism. The more we can generate revenue from this for the local communities, local councils, as well as the government, the more profitable land use this will be, and will not have that conflict, between different land uses. There is also lack of training, or limited training opportunities for grassroots communities, students in this area. So I think there is need to mentor and support, aspiring conservationists, aspiring primatologists, aspiring great researchers. And, this can all come together if we, as grassroots community organizations, work as a team, like networking amongst us and, sharing ideas and experiences. And that is why I really commend this initiative by GSAC. I just want to acknowledge the government of Cameroon, the Yaoundé City Council, all our funders. If, you have any questions, I will be really happy to take a few. I don't know how much time we use, but 26 minutes, I think we are good for time. So that is in the Mbam Jerem National Park. We have a good population of Niger Cameroon chimpanzees there as well. Okay, thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Denis, pour cette présentation.
Ekoge.
Ok. S'il vous plaît, je propose que nous prenions 15 petites minutes pour des questions. C'est vrai qu'on est en retard, mais c'est tellement intéressant. S'il y a des pistes ou des choses à creuser, je crois qu'on devrait prendre 15 minutes pour pouvoir le faire. Donc, je ne sais pas comment est-ce qu'on procédera. On va passer la parole à qui voudra la prendre et on va peut-être noter une série de questions. On va noter les questions et puis il va répondre peut-être par vague. C'est bon comme ça? Ok. Donc, la parole est à qui veut bien la prendre. Il y a un bras au fond. Enfin, il y a 1, 2, 3. On prend par série de 3 questions. Oui.
So I'm the director of Cameroon Environmental Watch. I'm also the president of the National Committee, IUCN, Cameroon. So we have a site between Yaoundé and Douala where we have helped mayors, 2 mayors, to classify it as council forest. It's just 15,000 hectares, a small site. But in this small site, which is already a council forest, we have some chimps, but we don't know the numbers. So we are unable to say whether there are many or not. So in this case, and within a council forest, not knowing the numbers, do you have an advice? Because we are looking forward to writing a management plan, but we have no means yet to write a management plan. So I would just like to have your advice on how we can do to save without we don't know the numbers. Thank you very much.
Ok. On note la première question, juste derrière lui.
Merci, Monsieur Valentin Massombo. Je suis responsable de la conservation et foresterie communautaire au sein de l'ONG Mbumutu. Ma question, c'est suite à l'inquiétude que je viens d'observer tout de suite. Je vis qu'une population de gorilles, la taille de la population est estimée entre 250 et 300 individus. Alors ma question est de savoir quelle est la taille de la population normale qu'une population peut survivre dans la nature. Et cette population de 250 à 300 individus est répartie dans quelle zone? Quelle est la chance qu'on donne à cette population pour la survie? Merci.
D'accord. Il y avait un doigt au fond, si je ne m'abuse.
Hello again, hi, it's Nigel, the Deputy from the British High Commission. I actually have two very quick questions, if that's okay. The first one is, this is obviously an event about sensitization, and I wondered if you could give us as diplomatic representatives some pointers about what you think we could do in the public sphere to promote your work, whether it's to highlight bad cases or to promote good cases of interventions that support your goals. That's my question one. My question two is, when you were talking about networking and links across the region, could you comment a little bit about how law enforcement is connecting across the region? You know, I often think about how trafficking or other movements may be going across borders, and I'm very interested in how different governments are linking up their law enforcement capacities. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you so much for these wonderful questions. I just want to take this opportunity to point out that Professor Ngufo was actually my lecturer in the University of Yaoundé. So he's a lecturer in the geography department. I moved away from geography today. I'm a biologist, but I mean, that's how dynamic we got to be. So yes, Prof, it's sometimes difficult, and this is the problem we have across the range of chimpanzees and gorillas, that we don't really know the numbers. And that is because we've not had surveys over long periods of time, and some populations have never been surveyed, ever. But the good news is that we can actually do some rapid surveys. In an area like the one you're talking of, maybe there is hunting pressure and all of that, and it may not even be easy to observe chimpanzees. But chimpanzees build nests, okay? And these nests are actually used to attest the presence of chimpanzees, as well as, you know, estimate their numbers. So maybe we will exchange contacts, and after this, you know, try to see how to maybe get a student or somebody who is interested in, you know, assessing a novel population, and that will be the way to go. So thank you. I hope that answered it. Yes, sir, in terms of, you know, what would be like a good population, I don't know if that's the question, or a population that will be viable for the long term. I think it's in that line you were asking. One thing we need to know, whether chimpanzees or gorillas or bonobos, okay, what we presented there, you know, most often across the whole range, you know, for instance, for chimpanzees and gorillas, is actually, you know, the total population, what is estimated as the total population of the different species and subspecies across the area. And it's not like all of these are concentrated in one spot. No, they are actually found in different places, and some of these are actually disconnected. You know, there's no gene exchange between some of these populations. But, you know, each population has numbers that will, you know, like, just if they are not disturbed, you know, by Ebola killing and all, you know, even if it's 20 individuals, they can actually sustain themselves. We have populations of chimpanzees, for instance, in Busu, Guinea, just about 20 individuals, you know. And for chimpanzees, they live in these communities of about 20, sometimes up to 150 individuals. And they have a territory that is well defined, that they defend, okay? but they accept females from other communities to come into their community, while the females of that community will go out to another community. This is to avoid inbreeding. So, I mean, so long as the population can carry out, these basic ecological, activities, no matter how small it is, and if it's not isolated, very isolated from other populations is a good thing. So, which is why I think, just having, conserving landscapes, where we can conserve different populations within the same landscape would be a good thing, okay? All right, thank you. Yes, sir. Law enforcement and, connections and, I don't know, coordination, across the board. This is actually a really, really important issue, and, there is no single grassroots community organization here that actually has the capacity. I hope GSAC may actually, have that capacity, but more and more, and for a long time, we have, one important organization that has influence not just in this Congo Basin region, but is actually having an impact across Africa. And this is the Last Great Apes organization. The Last Great Apes organization, which if you look at the Facebook feeds they put it as Eagle, they are doing a lot of work on the ground, because as I pointed out earlier, law enforcement is quite low, and most often than not, it's limited to seizures of, bushmeat or animals that are caught in pet trade. This is actually what is happening, and there is so little prosecution, of defenders. But Laga or Eagle, is actually working in synergy with governments and these NGOs across the area, so that defaulters are actually brought to book. And we see several cases of people being imprisoned or actually fined across Gabon, Cameroon, even across to Uganda and all these countries. The other question? Sorry.
The question was for the diplomatic community, whether you had any advice or requests of us in terms of promoting
yes.
Promoting sensitization, which
yes.
is what this whole thing is, but
yes.
what would you expect from the diplomatic community?
Yeah, so this is a very, very great question. I'm really, really happy for this. And, you talked, and the representative of the French ambassador actually talked as well and said, oh, there are these funds from this group, that may help in this, that, just pointing us already to these directions, like funds that may be available to GSAC if they are fortunate, as you said, this is actually, pointing things to the right direction, I think so, and I'm really grateful for that. In addition, spreading the good news, because in many cases, people think, conservation should be done in a particular way. For instance, protected areas, no going in there and all. And, they say there's just no way community conservation can work. You cannot implicate grassroots communities in conservation. The presence of all these groups here attests that, community conservation can work and is working across Africa. And this is actually what we need to promote. And so just sending that news out there, giving openings, for such assemblies to happen, because bed for funding, from organizations, out there, including the diplomatic service, will not be able to, be here. I think Guillaume Tati can attest to this. So yes, please send the good message, providing technical and even, like financial, resources. I think, that's actually, the way we need to go with, our work. Thank you for this question.
Yeah, I'm Peter Mbile. I'm with WWF here in Yaoundé. So I just wanted to contribute to the idea of networking for law enforcement within Central Africa. Unfortunately, our friend has just left, but traffic is a place to go to, and traffic actually brings together a number of the structures the presenter identified, LAGA, etc. So WWF, working with IUCN and some of the nations of Central Africa, actually facilitate interactions between customs, police officers, security agencies. And there is a lot of work around this where
we see in the trafficking of small arms, trafficking of drugs, actually using traditional routes to peddle their trade. So it's just to, I will probably find the gentleman and try to get some information to him.
Thank you. I am Etat Agbohans, the conservator of Bakossi National Park in the Southwest region. One remark and one question, just to say that on law enforcement, we are carrying out an approach of traditional conservation, which integrates a lot of participation and collaboration of the local communities, where traditional injunctions even have proven very, very veritable, very successful in ensuring that great ape population and other large mammals are protected, and even on looking at identification of the management issues, the target groups concerned, and sustainable livelihood improvement strategies. That was a remark. And for a question, I got my interest. Of course, the presentation was very, very good. I was happy with it. The interest was on the population of the Cross River gorillas, which is a little bit about 300 inhabitants. Just to find out, when was the last wildlife inventory conducted in that area that came out with that particular population of individuals? And what is the perspectives as far as the regularity of inventory is concerned? So for us to ascertain the trend over time and even the impact of threat on those particular populations. Thank you.
Hello? Yes. Yeah, so I agree with you. You know, there's WWF working with traffic, IUCN, you know, and all of this, you know, to do law enforcement, especially in terms of wildlife trade as well. So thanks for that. Yeah, Bakossi National Park, Mr. Etat, and, you know, the traditional conservation, you know, measures put in place. I'm really, really happy you're bringing this up because I'm sure if we were to share experiences from the different sites here, you get to understand that different communities are actually putting down different laws to protect their populations of, you know, great apes and other biodiversity as well. Going now to your question about inventories, the sad thing is that inventories are not always as regular as we would want them. Most of what we have today as population estimates for Cross River gorillas are actually dating back to maybe before 2010. You know, I think Erode can actually attest to this if I'm right. So we don't really have, you know, updated information, and I think we need to be doing more, you know, in terms of, you know, what is found where, because we don't have any coordinated effort. And that is where I actually said that the regional action plans are actually good, but these are not implemented to the latter because there are sites which are to be prospected where surveys are to be carried out, but this is not always the case. And so if we were to actually update ourselves on what we have on the ground, maybe we'll see today that the number could be different, either lower or higher, or, I mean, we don't know, it could be stable, but we need more updated information for this. And this goes, you know, to, you know, other areas, because I don't know when was the last inventory in Ja or Campoman or anywhere done. So we need some regularity, and, you know, the onus is actually on us. And all we need to do is, you know, to mentor students, you know, get their attention to this direction so that, you know, they can carry out inventories across the board. And how do we do it? You know, we can actually standardize some methods and send people out there, you know, encourage them, and, you know, they do the work, you know. Yeah, thank you.
call Dr. Jungeb Juska. I'm interested in the community actions towards the conservation of great apes. Now, if you take the example of Igbo forest, where you know much, I want to know the various community actions that have been put in place for the conservation of great apes, the various challenges, and the way forward, and what are the actions you think you can put down for you to help the communities you work with to really improve the actions toward the conservation of great apes. Thanks.
Doc, for that question. Yeah, I talked severally, I talked so much on different projects that are doing community conservation. But for instance, for the case of Ebo, the first thing is getting these communities actually realize that they live in an area that is diverse, an area that is important, and what they have around them can actually be used not against them but for them. And many people tend to see conservation as working against the interests of the local communities. And more, we are going towards the direction of people realizing that conservation is for them. And that is where we are, where a group of people can come together as an a voluntary group to conserve biodiversity. And so for the case of Ebo, what are the main things they do? The main objective of this group, as they call them, Club des Amis des Gorilles, is actually to conserve the small gorilla population that may even be a third subspecies of gorillas in Cameroon. But while doing so, working to improve on the livelihoods of the local people, okay? And so this group actually goes to the field. Since the population is small and in a small area, they are trying as much as possible to limit threats, human threats to this population. And so on a monthly basis, they go out, they spend about 10 days in the forest, seeing where gorilla signs are and mapping these in relation to human signs. And, when they see human signs that are actually increasing and against, the gorillas, these are reported to the executive of the club as well as the traditional authorities. It may even sometimes be taken as far as the administration, okay, because they have administrative support. So these are, measures they put down to actually try to stem, the threats to gorillas. But the people depend on these resources, to be able to live. And telling them, don't go in there, is actually telling them, don't eat. Okay? Because, the approach and everything comes from there. So this group is actually working in synergy with Ebo Forest Research Project, whereby they are actually promoting alternative livelihood activities. Before now in this area, cocoa farming used to be, common. But since many people think, okay, it's easier to hunt, they abandon their cocoa farms. So now the Club des Amis des Gorilles has actually encouraged people to renew their cocoa farms, extend them, and they had support from the project, that brought in high-yielding cocoa pods from Iraq. They actually do a lot of other activities, including making of soap, transforming cassava just to add value, and they can sell these things outside. These are all activities the group is engaged in. But the message, just like somebody said, is not supposed to stay just in the village. So they go out and do a lot of sensitization. So during the National Day, for instance, they go out with banners and, promote that the gorillas in their area are unique and need to be conserved, okay? And this group actually made a lot of noise, when the government decided to classify the Ebo forest into a UFI, logging concession. They said, no, we have our homes there, we have our gorillas there, so this should not work, okay? And as you all know, 3 weeks later, the head of state ordered that, this decree should be suspended. So, it's thanks to the dynamism of this grassroots community. So I think they have a lot to do, in terms of biodiversity conservation. Yeah, in terms of challenges, come on, there are always challenges, okay? The first thing is that, okay, the area you work in is so remote, so far off, like you have to drive for hours on end to get there. Sometimes, it's not even possible to get there. So what do you imagine these communities, that live so remote in there, what main economic activities can they carry out? So that is a huge, huge challenge, okay? Yes, poverty, they don't have anything to live on. You tell somebody, don't hunt, okay? Whereas, the child is sick, the wife is pregnant and all, they need something to live on. So, but with time, we are trying to surmount all of this. And the main thing is building their capacity and, getting that notion of, the forest is always full of animals, full of resources, these things disappear, but gradually they are coming to realize that, these things will not always be there. And so, most of them are now biologists, as I'll put it. Yeah. Thank you.
Ok, merci de me passer la parole. Je vais juste poser une petite question. Je suis déjà M. Tanima Job Célestin, chef de service des parcs nationaux pour le moment. Et je le pose parce que j'ai été sur le terrain, j'ai travaillé sur le terrain, j'ai touché certaines réalités du doigt. Ce qui concerne maintenant la conservation communautaire dont nous parlons aujourd'hui, je voudrais dire, nous saluons déjà beaucoup la contribution des communautés, n'est-ce pas, à cette initiative. Nous avons vu les communautés s'impliquer. Et je voudrais également dire, nous devons davantage amener ces communautés à s'impliquer dans la conservation, à être passionnés, mais pas à le faire peut-être par intérêt, peut-être parce qu'on leur a proposé quelque chose de symbolique pour développer une activité alternative. Si je le dis, si je prends le cas spécifique de Ebo pour illustrer l'idée que je suis en train d'exprimer, parce que nous avons vu des populations qui étaient pour la conservation, qui sont même jusqu'à aller demander l'audience à la présidente de la République pour solliciter que le parc d'Ebo soit définitivement érigé en parc national à travers la signature du décret. Et d'un moment à l'autre, ont changé d'avis en militant pour la cause de l'UEFA, peut-être parce qu'ils ont estimé qu'ils devaient gagner gros. À ce moment, je dirais, les communautés ont adhéré à ce moment au processus par intérêt, parce qu'ils avaient des intérêts qui venaient de gauche à droite. Une fois que l'UEFA est arrivé, ils ont pensé qu'ils allaient gagner plus que ce qu'ils gagnaient avant, quand ils militaient pour la conservation. C'est un peu la contribution que je voudrais apporter. Ce n'est pas une question en tant que telle. C'est... Okay.
Thanks so much, Celestine. But I would like to comment on that because, yeah, there's always an interest, an impetus, something that's driving, why you have, going to a particular direction. And I know, for instance, that in the case of Ebo, initially, okay, is that the people did not, were living with this biodiversity, rich biodiversity about them, and knew what was in there, but it was brought to the limelight even more by conservationists, researchers who came to the area and showed them, oh, what you have in terms of gorillas could be unique. What you have in terms of chimpanzees has these different attributes that are unique. And this started, like bringing out this element of pride. Okay? I don't know if somebody can translate pride. The people actually started feeling proud that we have something that other people don't have. And when the traditional rulers of Ebo came together and said, oh, our chimpanzees crack nuts. I remember when they will have meetings, even with the minister, they'll say, no, the chimpanzees in our area are unique because they are the only chimpanzees that crack nuts. Our gorillas are this. So they had that sense of pride. And this is what was driving them, that we should not lose what is unique in the world and found only in our forests, okay? And this is what I think should be the driving force for everybody. But as you rightly said again, human beings are really, really vulnerable, okay? Especially communities, which as somebody gave earlier, what are the challenges? One of the challenges we have in the area is poverty, okay? So it takes just a moment, to flash a bit of money, you know, in front of somebody like, oh, support this cause, like the cause of UEFA. I mean, I think this is actually where we are heading at. And this thing of, you know, saying people are influenced by their elites, okay? You have a few elites who tell them, okay, this is for our good. This will bring us this, you know. I mean, these are the stuff, things that might actually, you know, cause the local people, these communities that had actually been, you know, like clamoring for the creation of the national park to then turn back and say, oh, now we want UEFA. Because many of them, you don't even hear their voices again, just because they're actually influenced by, you know, some elites in the area. So I think this is where we're driving at, and I'm glad we all understand the dynamics on the ground. Thank you so very much. Yeah.
Avec votre permission, merci beaucoup Denis pour la présentation. Est-ce qu'on peut le remercier plus chaleureusement une autre fois encore? Merci également à tous ceux qui ont participé avec les questions, les contributions et tout le reste. Alors, nous avons pris un peu de retard. Nous irons à la pause déjeuner là maintenant. S'il vous plaît, un peu vite. C'est immédiatement, c'est l'espace immédiatement après les stands d'exposition qui est là derrière. On a 45 minutes pour manger, s'il vous plaît. Donc, je propose, c'est prêt, allons-y, parce que depuis maintenant, on n'a plus que 44 minutes. Hein? Ok. La salle est sécurisée, n'est-ce pas? On peut laisser les affaires ici. Maître de cérémonie. Très bien. On va faire. Comme des membres doivent libérer la salle à 16h. C'est ça. C'est ça. On va couper ça.